Some people start life running. As a child, the systems presented to them just make sense, and throughout their schooling, these individuals are able to coast along with minimal effort, grading well, and receiving praise aplenty. Eventually, these people hit higher education or a demanding employment position, and suddenly they have to learn a work ethic. No more free rides for being fortunately geared for education. It's time to work. And they struggle. At this stage, the lucky kid can either buckle down and push through the pain, or they can reject it. There must be a path of least resistance some other way, so they'll quit and try something else, hoping the cruise starts again. In the video game industry, no other individual embodies this more than Peter Molyneux.
Polishing those to the highest possible level we can. And the first feature I spoke about was how come the screen's gone black.
During a talk delivered at the 2011 Game Developers Conference, Molyneux said that Commodore had mistakenly contracted his exporting business to develop a networking software for their new Amiga home computer.
The networking solution, which obviously Commodore were very keen to have on their machine. They didn't want baked beans on their machine, not in any formal way. I chose to lie.
Naturally, Molyneux seized the opportunity to pivot into software development, and after the project was completed, was then fortunate enough to be offered another contract porting a game to the Amiga 1000. This led to the establishment of Bullfrog Productions in 1987. As time passed and Molyneux began rising through the ranks of Electronic Arts, who had acquired Bullfrog, he left both companies and established Lionhead Studios. 10 years after the founding of Bullfrog Productions, Molyneux was now building a new company in order to gain more freedom from Electronic Arts' watchful eye. With a purported focus on keeping the entire development team working on a single project, Lionhead was geared to develop premier titles while also offering the employees a more relaxed workplace culture. With the release of Fable in 2004, this ideal was diminishing. The company's financial concerns leading to the release of 2 games in 2005 and the subsequent acquisition by Microsoft in 2006. 6 years later, Molyneux would leave the company, citing similar creative concerns as had been claimed when he left Bullfrog previously. Much like Bullfrog's eventual absorption into EA's UK division, Microsoft would dissolve Lionhead within a few years of Molyneux's departure. The design philosophy Molyneux instilled within the employees did inspire a number of the developers to replicate it within their own businesses post-dissolution. But, while the eventual deaths of Bullfrog and Lionhead are interesting, the reason these studios are even notable is the consistent quality of the games they released throughout their existence. Molyneux's original rise to prominence came about with the popularity of a management title called Populous. Populous has the player manage a kingdom in a revolutionary hands-off style. This style became Molyneux's trademark and would provide the overarching format for many of Bullfrog and Lionhead's landmark releases. Somewhere along the way, the term God Game was created to describe the hands-off management style. By the end of the 80s, a number of management games and business simulations had already been released to financial success, so insisting that Bullfrog's and Lionhead's management games are in some way significantly different to the likes of SimCity or Rollercoaster Tycoon is an assessment I don't really understand. If the player's embodiment of a particular entity within the game is somehow important to the overall mechanical function of the game, then I would understand if people wanted to refer to Super Mario's genre as plumber platformer. But we don't do that. While the player might not be managing finances while playing Black and White, the collection of one resource to be expended for further expansion is essentially the same thing. The end goal is nebulous, and ensuring everything is advancing as desired is the primary objective of this style of gameplay. This is the case in Lionhead's November of 2005 release, The Movies. The player's objective is to build a film lot in which they create movies to earn financial sustenance. To do this, they will need to hire actors, directors, extras, film crews, and scriptwriters to produce the films, builders to construct and maintain the lot's buildings and film sets, researchers to advance the filmmaking process, and a handful of other staff roles that affect the studio's functionality. Films are scripted, the writers taking into account the genre of film requested, as well as the types of sets available. Next, the script must be cast and rehearsed, the experience of each cast member adding to the overall quality of the end product. Once rehearsals are complete, the filming process will take place, each of the film's participants having to run to each set and perform their roles in real time. Once all of the scenes have finished being filmed, the movie will be ready for release. Various stats will impact the film's overall performance at the box office, and cause the player to earn more money or win awards at the awards ceremony that occur every 5 years. The player must build all of the amenities to facilitate film production, as well as keep their employees happy. Actors and directors, referred to as stars, have a deeper range of needs that affect their industry rating and mood. The passage of time affects the style of clothing a star should be wearing to increase their rating, and world events cause the viewing public to be more interested in certain genres. Films created by the studio are watchable by the player on release, with the technological capability of the studio affecting the image filter and sound quality of the video files the game creates. The films are even reviewed to give the player hints on which aspects they can improve upon. Was the actor cast to lead your action movie not experienced enough in the genre to give a good performance? Was their physique not appropriate to play the part of a highly trained super spy? All of these aspects, as well as many others, are within the player's management control, and staying on top of it all is vital to seeing long-term success. The total number of manageable pieces seems quite overwhelming, but there are a few measures to mitigate the management load. On the left of the screen, the player has a series of menus for each type of staff member that makes locating available staff simple, as finding them within the lot can be a bit of a challenge. Certain tasks will have staff automatically assigned to them, which reduces the quantity of menu flipping too. It isn't possible to move staff or place structures while the game is paused, but having the ability to stop the game while still being able to view the lot is very helpful. Other than all of the staff looking for tasks to complete without the player's direct input, that's as far as reducing the management load goes. The player will be responsible for managing all of their stars' mood, genre experience, clothing, exercise or plastic surgery plans, addiction rehabilitation, relationships, casting, stress, boredom, trailer, public relations, and assistance. Stars will also decide to leave sets to do something else when they should be filming, so the player has to make sure they're working. Stars and extras age, so having a plan to replenish roles after staff retire is necessary. Scriptwriters and researchers need to be assigned to tasks manually too. With the Stunts and Effects expansion pack, stunt performers become another staff type that the player will have access to. Stunt performers have their own stunt capability skill that needs to be trained, as well as a condition stat for when they've hurt themselves for their art. Injured stunt performers will need to be hospitalized in order to recover, but they won't go to hospital themselves, nor will stunt performers practice stunts without the player directly telling them to. So that's a lot to manage, but it isn't over there. Films are basically a series of stat dumps that eventually add to the final film's quality. The industry rating of the stars involved with the film, their moods, their relationships with each other, their experience within the film genre, their physical stats in relation to the film genre, the public interest in a certain genre, the script and the writer's experience level, the crew's experience level, the filming technology level, the novelty value of the sets, the novelty value of the actors, costume changes, set condition, the overall length of the film, whether there's been a PR and marketing campaign, the difficulty rating of the stunts, whether the stunts were performed successfully during the first attempt, and a handful of other bonuses are all added together to determine a film's quality and the income it generates. My God, That isn't even everything. Initially, the load is quite low since certain capabilities aren't available until enough research has been conducted. By the 1980s, being able to stay on top of everything starts to reach RTS levels of continuous action, since so many staff will require the player's attention. Production of as many movies as possible is required, and the lot's limited space will mean the player will have to cycle sets in and out to prevent novelty scaling. It's a massive task, but the rewards are quite worthwhile. While the movies lacks the bullfrog level of silly humour, it is still a fun experience. Occasionally, the player will tune in to the KMVS radio station and listen to an announcement from the presenter of each era. These are excellently delivered blurbs from a wide cast of fun characters, adding a little anecdote in between some of the music.
Here is a public service announcement. If you have committed a crime, give yourself up to the authorities now. Thank you.
William Macduff is fantastic, and Wally Crunkleberger's communist paranoia extending to children is great.
All right, let's set today's competition. The question is, which despicable ideology is the most dangerous and ill-thought-out doctrine since the Stone Age? Get it right, and you could win a pair of calfskin bicycling gloves.
When the filming is occurring on set, the actors actually complete the actions that will be shown in the movie later on. It's an impressive detail for 2005 that many games would have skipped and just used a generic animation of the set being in use instead. The player is able to create their own scripts, which are used like any other. The stars must be cast, they have to change into their costumes, run between the sets, and the player can release the movies to the box office. Making your own scripts is the most consistent way to get the highest quality, but it can't be done passively, and the process is somewhat time-consuming. But if there's a desire to make something specific using the predetermined animations, the tool is there for the player to use. Alex Chan, a freelance industrial designer, used the tools to create a short film that criticized the French government's migration policy, which ended up being shown in a number of international film festivals during 2006. I used the tool to create a music video, and there have been many other animations uploaded to YouTube throughout the website's existence. The game is over 15 years old now, but its visuals are still okay. Poly counts are generally quite high, and the texture quality throughout is passable. Most parts of the game look like they're supposed to, and the bright light that bathes the lot the entire time increases the appeal. There is also a heavy emphasis on filling the lot's empty space with decorations, which completely removes any opportunity for the game to appear barren and lifeless. The animations themselves are quite exaggerated, which is both ideal and disappointing. But, with the rather bland-looking character models, I would have guessed that more subdued animation would seem much more boring. I'm uncertain if the widescreen mod I used caused some of the text to be slightly too large, but it was the only issue I noticed with the UI. The nested windows of information about the stars is such an incredible choice that is instantly readable and so much more elegant than a big list of stats. The music is consistently awesome throughout, and new tracks are added as the time goes on. However, the presentation isn't flawless, and some of the worst aspects are mechanically incentivized. One of the stats that affects a star's industry rating and their suiting to a role is their physique stat. A star's physique stat is decreased when the star is overweight, and improved when they're fitter and have larger chests. As a result, the player is incentivized to send their stars to receive silicone implants in their chests and breasts. This doesn't align well with our more accepting standards of beauty nowadays, but it also causes all of the characters to have massive shoulders, and the female models to have ridiculously stretched textures on their tops. Considering how little exaggeration is present throughout the rest of the game, it's odd that the plastic surgery can get so extreme. This is a relatively minor issue when compared to the horrific imbalance of the award show bonuses. Each award comes with a bonus depending on the category. Providing the best working environment awards the player doubled research speed until the next award show, for example. The award for being the highest rated studio is the most unbalanced in how it actively destroys the studio if the player wins it a lot, and then doesn't win it once. Stars' mood and rating factor into the amount of money that they want to be paid, so only having to pay a staff half of what they expect to be making is obviously especially good. The stars' higher rating and better mood benefit the studio as a whole and provide a snowball effect financially. Suddenly losing this bonus absolutely ruins the studio's finances, and cutting the pay of the stars to accommodate the new situation destroys their mood and ratings. Their performances are then rated lower, they're more likely to abandon the set, the star rating of the movie will fall, all factors that decrease the overall box office income and forcing the financial strain to worsen. The half-pay bonus also allows the player to hire a lot more stars to increase the total number of films being produced simultaneously. Losing the buff means the player will have to fire a bunch of stars that have had considerable resources put into their stats. A fired star can even defect to another studio, the player's investment literally walking into the hands of their competitors. The entire playthrough can suddenly end because the player took too long to make one film, or a B-team movie didn't review so well, and these playthroughs are not short. My first playthrough for this video died 13 hours in after I was unable to secure enough staff to satisfy my needs. Newly employable staff appear infrequently throughout the majority of the game, which can lead to some severe bottlenecks in expansion. The total number of buildings that can be built isn't limited as much by the available space as it is limited by the available builders required to maintain those buildings. With declining set maintenance directly affecting film quality, it is important to keep things well maintained. Eventually, stars will have their entourage included into their industry rating. A star's entourage is the number of assistants they have, meaning more staff are diverted into keeping someone's rating higher. After encountering this problem, I installed a mod that would increase the number of potential employees that would arrive to mitigate the bottleneck somewhat. This worked for a long time, and while I was eventually bottlenecked by staff shortages, it wasn't the direct cause for my playthrough's death. After 20 more hours, the studio fell into financial ruin after the B-Team's 90s rom-com didn't earn the full 5-star rating. Much like Mr. Molyneux, things went quite well for a while, then something went a little wrong. Now, my once adored studios are defunct, and I've moved on to something else. The thing is, I'd happily play another 20 hours. Spinning this many plates and being rewarded for it is extremely satisfying, and being able to take a break from the management side to play with a scriptwriter, or the Sims dress up and be friends stuff, is a very welcome diversion that still advances the primary objective of the studio. So would I recommend the movies to others? I think so, with a few caveats. If you enjoyed Theme Hospital and have completed a few of the higher tier scenarios in Roller Coaster Tycoon, then the management aspects shouldn't be too overwhelming for you. The movies only has a single scenario, but the playtime is far longer than an entire Theme Hospital playthrough, and losing all progress because of a small failure is reminiscent of those X number of visitors by Year 4 RCT scenarios. As a first-timer to management games, the movies will eventually overwhelm you. How the awards are even handed out is initially difficult to understand, and losing a long playthrough because of a staff shortage, which is explicitly the game's fault, can be a huge turn-off. The license is also in limbo. The game was originally published by Activision, but the property rights now belong to Microsoft, and due to its niche popularity when it was released in 2005, I can't imagine there is much incentive to work out the license problems. That being said, the second-hand market is overflowing with available discs, so repacking your own copy or installing a no-disc mod could definitely be done in good conscience. Lionhead managed to create 2 cult classic games at the same time and still couldn't keep afloat. They lost their independence and their leader, but those years in the sun were magnificent. Peter Molyneux has repeatedly been thrust into positions of prominence for his incredibly original ideas, but hasn't managed to dig deep and keep the momentum going. When things start going wrong, it's far easier to start over and be free of all the problems, instead of trying to repair the sinking ship. When successes are measured and compared, some rise up, and others fall away. The studio has gotten too large, too bloated, too much new technology coming in. Wouldn't it be easier to just go back to a simpler time? This Wikipedia page was a stub, so I intend to help by expanding it. Moscow will thank me.
That's it. There's no need to hurry now. I have all the time in the world. It's over.